Game of Thrones has come and gone, and like many out there, I was deeply disappointed in how the final season shaped up, and I'm not the only one. I hate Dumb and Dumber. The producers and writers of the show, I have never liked them. They're the most overrated, egotistical, sorry excuses for talent in Hollywood. As of the making of this video, the petition to rewrite Season 8 is approaching a staggering 1.5 million signatures. That's like more than the petition to end world hunger. But it's one thing to hate this season, it's another to claim you could have written it better. So before you go ahead and automatically dislike this video, hear me out. If you don't like what I'm putting down, fair enough. But the whole reason I'm making this video is because I love this show so much and felt the characters deserve a lot better. I'm splitting this video into two distinct first, my two major critiques of the season, and to the rewrite. So if you're interested in just the rewrite portion, I've left a timestamp in the description below. But keep in mind my critique of the season informs the rewrite a few ground rules before we begin. This is going to be a broad, overarching revision of some of the main tentpole moments, not a scene rewrite, or else we'd be here all day. In fact, I'm leaving episodes 1 and 2 relatively untouched, opting to start with episode 3 where things started to go downhill for me, and then onward to episode 4 where things went completely off the rails while Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces. And I'm also not going to magically add episodes or seasons. I want to give myself the same constraints the showrunners had, even though the last 35 minutes of the final episode arguably could have been an entire season in and of itself. So I'm gonna briefly go over what I believe the two major problems of this season were. Now, I know there are literally hundreds of things to bitch about this season, and I could do a video entirely just on that, but for the purposes rewrite, I'm going to focus just on these two major the Night King and two character arcs. The Night King is the main antagonistic force that propels much of the narrative in the show. It's his presence that forces people like Dany and Jon to band together in order to save humanity. If the Night King is successful in his quest, then it doesn't matter who's on the Iron Throne. I argue that the Night King is more important of a foe than Cersei, and there's more at stake should our heroes fail against him. Look all the way back at the very first scene in the very first season. It doesn't start with the death of Jon Arryn, palace intrigue, or something to do with the throne. It starts with the White Walkers. That's how important they and the Night King are. This is why the Night King dying in episode 3 was a major mistake. Not only were we denied an epic battle between Jon and the Night King, which was essentially promised to us with the end of Hardhome, but all 8 seasons of the show have been building up to this moment where they defeat the Night King, or not, by having him die in episode 3. You lose 8 seasons of that tension. The best analogy I can make is imagine if Frodo dropped a ring into Mount Doom and defeated Sauron halfway through the Two Towers. The most climactic moment of the series should be continually built upon until it explodes near the final 10% of the show or film. Take a look at this diagram, which shows the traditional 3-act structure of a movie. The same applies for a TV series. Just in those instances it's stretched out across episodes. This is where the defeat of the Night King should have happened. And here's where it did. Keep this in mind when I go over my rewrite. The second major critique I have of the season are the character arcs mainly because many of them didn't live up to their potential, or B, were disregarded entirely. Now, that isn't to say some characters didn't receive proper arcs. I thought Sayura and Theon both received endings that made sense, both narratively and emotionally. But then there are characters like Jon, Dany, and the one who had the most potential, Jaime Lannister. Jaime had the most compelling arc over the 8 seasons, starting as an incestuous child, murderer who over the span of 8 seasons learns the error of his ways and becomes humble. Yet in the show's final episodes, he reverts back to his old self, and his love for Cersei takes over 8 seasons of building this change within him. Even banging Brienne was thrown under the bus so he could die to a pile of falling rubble. This unrealized potential of character arcs is something I want to address in the rewrite. So without further ado, this is how I would have written the final season of Game of Thrones. Okay, enough of that. We start with episode 3, the Battle of Winterfell, and for the most part, this episode will play out much like it did in the Real version. The combined forces of the unsullied Dothraki, Northmen, and Wildlings face off against the Night King and his undead horde. Meanwhile, Cersei, the Golden Company, and the Iron Fleet chill in King's Landing, having reneged on their promise to help in the upcoming war. But this episode will have one major difference that will completely change the episodes to come. The Night King will be victorious, and the remaining forces of Winterfell will be forced to retreat to King's Landing. Let's dig a little deeper how this would play out. First, I wouldn't put Tyrion, the women, and children in the crypt. Yes, it's fun to have them in danger from the rising corpses of the Stark family, but it's lazy writing. They are putting the thrill of having to dodge zombies above logic. As Peter Dinklage says, nobody thought of that. He's bringing all the dead people back to life, and they put the women and children in a crypt with all the dead people. So rah. Instead, I'd move them to the main hall where later Tyrion and the others are confronted with the fact they will soon die. It's like the scene in the Two Towers when the battle looks lost and we see the pain of the women and children embracing each other one final time. You can still have Tyrion and Sansa holding hands, then Tyrion picking up a blade ready to fight, and even Sansa ready to join him in their last terror. It's emotional, visceral, and gets the point across without mummies rising from the dead. Meanwhile, Dany and Jon would be taking on the Night King with their dragons, but as the battle intensifies, Jon has to split from Dany to help the soldiers below. Not only that, but he'll have to decide between saving Bran or fending off a zombie hordes about to break in and kill Tyrion and Sansa. But Theon, who's with Bran, tells Jon to go. He'll hold them off down there, and Jon and Rhaegal smash into the side of the main hall just in time to save the women and children, giving them the opportunity to escape through Winterfell's underground tunnels, which will have a spattering of undead for them to fend off. But then we can get characters like Arya, who would join them in, providing much-needed protection as they make their escape. Dany, hearing Rhaegal's cries, would muster enough strength to dismount the Night King from Viserion, plunging him to the ground, just like what happened in the original. Jon would then make his way to the Weirwood tree just in time to see Theon fall to the Night King. This death would fuel an emotional Jon to attack, and we finally get a sword battle between Jon and the Night King. Trust me, it'll be epic, but the Night King will prove too powerful for Jon, eventually gaining the upper hand, sword at the ready, to kill him when Bran suddenly wargs into Viserion, breathing dragon fire all over the Night King. Yes, in my version, Bran actually uses his powers. That actually helps them. But the Night King emerges from the fire, much like he did in the original, unscathed by the flames and now holding a dragonglass spear he slays Viserion, which causes the largest and most epic disintegration we've seen yet. Taking this BR moment of opportunity, Jon musters the strength for one last attack and stabs the Night King with his dragonglass sword. But nothing happens. The Night King, we find, is impervious to dragonglass. It's a huge shock to Jon, who is quickly picked up by the throat, much like Arya was. And when all seems lost for Jon, Dany swoops in on Drogon and knocks the Night King about 20 feet away, freeing Jon. With the battle lost, she grabs Jon and Bran, Winterfell burning in the background as we see Rhaegal overrun and killed. The episode would end with the risen dead, Dothraki unsullied and all those who perished in the battle, rising from the dead as the Night King continues his conquest south. As Jon looks to Bran, we'll find that Bran is stuck in his warg state and they're unable to snap him out of it. We'll get to what he's actually doing in a bit. What I like about this is that it keeps the tension of the Night King attack still at play while giving us a shocking new piece of information. That dragonglass doesn't work against him. It raises the stakes for the next, even bigger attack on King's Landing. If I'm going to keep comparing this to Lord of the Rings, Episode 3 is the Two Towers, and Episode 5 is Return of the King. Episode 4 would be rewritten to deal with the fallout of the battle as the remaining survivors hastily scramble to King's Landing. It's here that Cersei will have to decide whether or not to let them in, and it's Jaime who convinces her, along with reports that Qyburn receives on the encroaching dead army. Cersei agrees to let them in. She doesn't really have a choice here, but on one condition: as long as Dany bends a knee publicly for all to see, and with Cersei holding all the power here and Dany's army almost completely wiped out, Dany agrees. She puts her people before herself. She sacrifices everything for the safety of her kin. Episode 5, just like the original, would be an attack on King's Landing, but instead of it being a one-sided massacre, it would be an epic battle much like that of Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings. One of the things I disliked about the original was that it wasn't really a battle at all. The Golden and Company didn't do anything. Jon didn't do anything. I felt it had so much unrealized potential. So we're going to try to fix that. As the Night King approaches, his main forces line up along the outer walls. But the Night King is smart and has a separate force along the water's edge. As the temperature drops, the water around Euron's fleet starts to freeze, allowing the White Walkers access to the port, making the defending army have to defend from two fronts. Even worse is that we'll see Dothraki on undead horses, undead, unsullied, and a bunch of undead. Jon joined the battle for the Night King as well, but as the defenses of King's Landing begin to fall, Bran awakens from his dreamlike state as the three-eyed raven he's spent this time since the fall of Winterfell, going back in time searching for clues that could reveal the Night King's weakness, and those clues line the messages and symbols we've seen going back to Season 1. He notifies Dany, and this could be shown through a series of flashbacks like it has been with Bran in the past, that the Night King is linked to the Children of the Forest. Remember that the Night King was created by them in a place called Gods. When he was tied up against the Great Weirwood Tree. Bear with me as I go into a little bit of nerdy got lore here. The Grand or Great Weirwood Tree is the heart of all the weirwoods. In Westeros and in my version is the source of the Night King's power. After all, it created him. Why can't it destroy him as? Well, Dany is told that if she destroys it, it may also have the added consequence of destroying every type of magic in the world. Destroying the Grand Weirwood Tree would also kill Joe. After all, the only reason Jon is still alive was that he was revived using magic by Melisandre to make matters worse, since Bran was marked by the Night King. The Night King now knows what they're up to and will likely himself be on his way to protect the tree. Dany goes to Jon as the castle walls are crumbling and tells him what she has to do, and Jon, being the understanding and compassionate soldier, understands. But Dany is the one who's more torn here. Not because she'll lose Jon, but that she'll lose the father to her child. Yes, in my version, Dany is pregnant. Upping the SD takes about 10 notches. She flies off with Drogon to the Grand Weirwood Tree as the remaining forces of kings landing fight on. It's here. She confronted by the Night King in an epic final showdown, the real battle of ice and fire, and the only thing standing before her in the tree is the Night King himself. She confronts him, and before he attacks, she yells Dracarys, burning her, the Night King, and the Grand Weirwood Tree all together. And as the tree burns, so does the Night King's flesh. She takes her sword and stabs the Night King through the heart, piercing him into the burning tree, just like he was pierced in the heart by the children of the forest centuries ago. And this is all happening as Dany herself is being burned. But as we know she can withstand flames, she's just never had to endure flames of the strength before. And as the Night King is dying, so does Jon and the undead. What I like about this particular ending is that it makes the theory that the Night King would die by Dragonfire, true, just not in the way we envisioned it. It also ties in and brings back all those children of the forest, symbols we've seen throughout the season, which in the current version turned out meant nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. But where does that leave us with the other characters? We still have Cersei, the Mountain, Euron, and countless others. Don't worry, we can still have Clegane Ball and Euron. I'd have killed by the White Walkers. But then there's Cersei. Ah, yes, Cersei. Imagine this. The battle is over. We followed Jaime on his way to Cersei. We're not sure if he's going to kill her, and that adds to the tension in the halls of King's Landing. Completely out of the BL, Illyria Sand emerges and stabs him in the chest. You'll remember Illyria was stuck in a dungeon and forced to watch her daughters slowly be poisoned to death by the Lannisters. It was also the Lannisters responsible for her lover Oberyn's death in season 4. She's broken free, either by an ally letting her out or garnering her escape through the destruction caused by the attack. But as Jaime clings to life, it's revealed it isn't Jaime at all. It's Arya using Jaime's face as a mask to kill the queen. Illyria recoils in shock as Arya spits up blood. Don't worry, we'll see Arya survive and go off on her adventures, but I thought it would be a cool way to bring back her assassin training. Bring back Illyria and provide a fun twist. Then we have the showdown between the real Jaime and Cersei. Cersei tells him that it's finally over. They've won the throne in the battle of the undead. Dany and the Northern Army have all but been destroyed. and nothing stands in their way. But Cersei won't stop. There, now the battle is over. She says she must send a signal, a decisive blow. She calls for the murder of anyone who is loyal to Daenerys. Jaime pleads on their behalf. Without them, they never would have survived. And besides, is this the type of new world they want their child to grow up in? And it's here. Cersei divulges there never was a baby. It was all part of playing the game to simultaneously keep him and Euron in check. She tells him to go ahead and kill them all. A throwback to Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King, when he wanted the city to burn. And it's here Jaime completes his arc, plunging his sword into Cersei and killing her for good. The Kingslayer is now also the Queen Slayer. Dany arrives back and rushes to Jon laying by his side, but it's too late. King's Landing is in ruins with no one to rule. A crowd is formed around her and the dead body of Jon. Tyrion tells the bystanders of Jon's heritage and how Dany, now with Jon's child, makes her the rightful heir to the throne. Tyrion kneels before his queen, and hundreds of men and women around kneel as well. She makes her way to the throne and sits as we cut to black. But just because we can make it a little more emotional, we'll do something Game of Thrones hasn't done before. Hey, I can break the rules, right? Let's flash forward 5 years. Daenerys visits the crypts of Winterfell. And by the way, Winterfell has been rebuilt with Sansa as protector of the North. In the crypts, Jon's body has been placed next to Eddard and Catelyn, and who happens to come rushing through but their son. We can even throw in Ghost in here to do. She puts her hand on the tomb and walks away, calling for her son, saying, "Come along, Jon." I like this because it does away with the whole powers of Westeros choosing the new king, not to mention Bran becoming king, which I thought was problematic.